Our besties.
Hello, every pony. I'm here with my friend Cigarette Suck, aka Gus.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna talk about how Fyodor Dostoevsky gave us a reading block. In my personal experience, I was reading Smashed. I was reading Eileen by Dostoevsky. I literally read 5 books in the span of 30 days before he gave me Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov for my for Christmas, and then I started reading it, and I got like 300 pages into it, and I literally, like, keep in mind, I binge read this book for a whole week straight and was still only 300 pages in, and I just felt so depressed because they haven't even gotten to the part where they kill their fucking father yet. And I got to the Grand Inquisitor, which was the part that I've been looking forward to for the whole book, and it was just more Ivan ramble, and I genuinely felt like crying. So I put the Brothers Karamazov back on my shelf, and I haven't touched it since then. But like after that, I deadass didn't pick up a book for like a whole month. It was depressing as fuck. But don't get me wrong, I love the Brothers Karamazov, or at least the much that I've read. It was really good. You know, I'm just sad that I couldn't read anymore.
I think that's the problem with Dostoevsky. He sort of stretches out as much as he can with analog, especially with character dialogue, and the fact that he has, you know, more than 10 characters that are main characters in the book, that really puts like a reading restriction on him, that if you're not willing to read like 100 pages of just dialogue, you do not want to read Dostoevsky. But I think Dostoevsky is a fundamental author or character in the literature world. I mean, because he gave us existentialism, literature, which Jean-Paul Sartre, ran off with. I mean, Nietzsche, even before Dostoevsky was a big writer, Nietzsche was doing, but I think Dostoevsky really just amplified the work of existentialism, which is kind of weird because at the end of the day, Dostoevsky was a full-born Christian. He was a religious man, and he sort of really believed in all the Christian works and unorthodox Christianity, which makes his works really unfamiliar with the Christian mind. But I think Dostoevsky is, even though if you take out his 100 pages of just pure yap, he is an amazing author. He uses wordplay amazingly. He describes the whole situation in explicit detail, which most readers aren't really familiar with. But I think Dostoevsky really does it in a way that it's a miracle and it's amazing. And I think it really led the path to Russian authors, or just authors in general, where they're not uncomfortable with, using as much writing as they can to really implement a situation into the book. You know what I mean?
I feel you, and I genuinely feel like his pure stretching of writing, it shows a passion for writing that a lot of authors lack. Like they want to get to the ending of the story. Dostoevsky, he takes his time getting to the end of the story, and I really like that, and it's a lesson from J.D. Salinger about writing to write and just writing because you enjoy writing. I think whenever I sit down and whenever I was reading Dostoevsky, I'm like, this man genuinely, writing is his escape. I could feel that writing is his second life. And so I'm not critiquing the word stretch of Dostoevsky. Every paragraph is art. It's really long, but I appreciate the apparent love for writing that he has. And you're right that he really does push like the agenda of existentialism, or was an early influence in it. And at the end of the day, Christianity could be chalked up to existentialism, because for my own definition, for my own understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, existentialism is being aware that life is meaningless, but finding your own reason to continue. Christians might not be aware that life is meaningless, but they definitely made their own reason to continue through Christianity, and that's why I view Christians as existentialists. So I think that Dostoevsky, in his own sense, was an existentialist writer, and his exploration of nihilism, of existentialism, of Christianity, is really admirable and really important for the minds of Russia at that time.
Yeah, well, you could say that well, Dostoevsky was a religious writer after he came out the workplace that he was in, sentenced to jail for basically nothingness, which he was sentenced to jail for being in a, I think, creative writer group, if I'm not getting that right.
You're correct. He
Yeah.
was in a creative writer group that was anti-government.
Yeah, anti-government, which is basically mostly the fundamental of punk culture as it is. But I think Dostoevsky really led the path to really rebelling against, the rights and dues, the morals of the government, which is fundamental, definitely fundamental. And I think government writing, which George Orwell put it as definitely well, or like Ernest Hemingway, which they were both in the military, they were both controlling the government. And I think Dostoevsky was definitely their biggest influence, which, I mean, if you put it at the end of the quote, Dostoevsky was he was definitely a born Christian, but he didn't really implement most of his Christian writings until The Brothers Karamazov, which was his last work before he died, which I think is really beautiful in a sense that, as much as I dislike Christianity and all religions, they really implement a faith and hopelessness to a human being, which I think at the end of the day is kind of absurdist, which Albert Camus really pioneered the philosophy of absurdist. But I think Dostoevsky was really the pioneer of absurdism, but in a way, he really didn't really implement a lot of the absurdism viewpoints, which are categorized in philosophy. Which at the viewpoint, Albert Camus wasn't really a philosophist; he was more of a literature writer. But a lot of his works were based in philosophy, which I really mean like the Myth of Sisyphus and the Fall of Man. They were really based in philosophy, which he wasn't really trying to do at the time. He was just writing shit, and it really just sparked a whole view of absurdism, which was basically Albert Camus was the father of absurdism, which is basically a form of existentialism and a form of nihilism. Kind of contrast, kind of differentiating from each other, kind of contradicting from each other, but in the gray area that it was really beautiful. And I think the Myth of Sisyphus was his best work. I think a lot of writers or a lot of readers say that The Stranger was his best work, because it really implements the ideology of absurdism. But I think the Myth of Sisyphus really, grounds it down to the point.
I haven't read the Myth of Sisyphus, so I'll have to check that out. I guess I am a casual reader whenever it comes to Camus. So I've only read The Fall and The Stranger. The Fall is my favorite writing from Camus. I prefer it over The Stranger, but I'll definitely dive more into that. But on to the main point of the video, fucking reader's block.
Oh yeah, writer's block. Definitely, I think Dostoevsky gives a lot of readers reading block, which is fundamentally, absurdist in the point of trying to get into literature, which I don't think you should be reading Dostoevsky if you're just getting into literature. I think he's more up in the level of Leo Dostoevsky, which with the War and Peace and Anna Karenina, I think it's really just stretched out in many parts, and really just you could put it up there with Les Miserables, with Victor Hugo, but I think it's really just stretched out to the point where they want to get as much pages, as much detail, and as much wordplay as they can, which I don't really dismenu, but I think in a point where Dostoevsky was stretching out the wordplay and stretching out the dialogue, I think it really gives a lot of new readers who are getting into literature a lot of writer's block, because they don't want to read it anymore, because they expect it to be dialogues, hundreds of pages, where it doesn't really get to the point of the book. But I think the best example is Crime and Punishment, where the first 300 pages are just fucking bullshit, just explaining the life of Raskolnikov and explaining why he did it. But I really think it's meaningful in a way, where it's more of an experience level reading to where a point where it's, you're barely getting into Dostoevsky, and most of his writings are just basically just filled with that, like filled with yapping. He doesn't really give a contradiction to the characters, but it really mostly depends on the translation of the book you're reading by Crime and Punishment, to where it really gives a message and gives a description title of the fundamentals of the book. But I think it really depends on what translation you read from Dostoevsky, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Bro, I remember whenever you were like reading fucking, what was it? It was either The Idiot or one of his other writings.
I think it was The Idiot, yeah.
Bro, you were like, I give up.
Yeah, dude, because The Idiot was just filled. The main character, the prince, was fully optimistic and fully just coherent with the way of life, where the other characters in the book didn't really have that view of life. They were mostly, I think you could categorize them as nihilists, but they were mostly just focused on the, well, now that I'm thinking about it, you could really categorize it as absurdism, which was pioneered by Albert Camus, but you could really categorize the other characters in The Idiot, which were fundamentally motivated by the simple pleasures in life, which Albert Camus, the absurdism, really rooted from, where you have to enjoy the little moments in life and not the big important parts, like having sex with a woman or having a cigarette or having a chocolate. And I think The Idiot was really a pioneer of sort of breaking down Albert Camus' absurdism view of philosophy, which I think is really beautiful in a sense. But The Idiot is definitely one of his like less philosophical writings. I think you could probably put up Crime and Punishment, Brothers Karamazov, and then Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Devils up there with his most philosophical works, which I think is kind of stupid in a sense and idiotic, where the Crime and Punishment as the whole book really explains the fundamental ideologies of impulsiveness and doing things that seem right to you in the moment, but over time they really seem fundamentally absurdist, which Albert Camus really pioneered.
Yo, you're so fucking smart, bro. It's like you put me on all the time, bro. But yeah, let's see. What else is there to say?
Well, we could really talk about Franz Kafka and his ideology of being existentialism before existentialism was really a rooted thing in philosophy, which a lot of his works were, especially the Metamorphosis or the Trial or the Castle, were really rooted into existentialism, as a whole before existentialism was really a thing, which existentialism as a whole was pioneered by Jean-Paul Sartre. And I think his biggest breakthrough was Nausea, which really pioneered the ideology of existentialism, and which really pioneered the fundamental thinking of most existentialism in the day.
Bro, do you hear that? Yo, I don't know if the phone's picking this up, but there's this southern ass couple, one of my neighbors, getting in this big ass argument right now. Like,
Yo, I did. I actually did hear that. I was like, who the fuck is screaming? You know what I mean? I thought it was just my boys.
bro, they raging over their Fyodor talk, dude. Holy. Well, fuck it. If y'all enjoy more conversations like this, make sure to subscribe. Shout out to Gus for carrying this video, bro. But yeah, fucking Fyodor sick. You should read, especially in 2026. And I hope if you click this video, you know, and you're not like really ever exposed to like emo or punk culture, this can break some stigma for you. We're some punks, just
Yeah.
looking. I'm drunk as hell if you can't tell, but we read too, you know, and reading is important. And yeah, read in 2026, and especially if you are a new reader, do not get into Dostoevsky until you've like fucking read at least 10 or 15 novels under the span of like 6 months, because he will seriously test your stamina. His writings are amazing. In each book, he brings a new philosophy to the table, and seriously was a big enlightenment thinker and was thinking outside of the box. One of the reasons why Fyodor is the GOAT is because he's still being talked about in America in 2026 by 2 fucking 18-year-old boys. Like, the influence is insane. There is a reason why this Russian Christian is still talked about. His influence in philosophy is insane. He is genuinely groundbreaking. Every single paragraph that he writes is art. Just saying, you will read so much art that you get unmotivated to read anymore. But keep pushing through. I'll give you an update if this southern couple fighting turns violent. But yeah, like and subscribe. You'll probably never see my channel recommended again. Appreciate it for watching.